The big game was entertaining, the big game was exhilarating, and it further elevated the status of a rising superstar in the game. And it ended Arsenal 6, West Ham 0. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Gunner. What other big game did you think I might have been talking about? Was there another big game that you had in mind? Because I didn't. The big game was Arsenal 6, West Ham 0. And there will be no talk of superb owls here. Certainly not. Certainly not. But I know one of the podcasters stayed up till wee hours of the night to watch it. And I mean, to each their own. And maybe even watched Usher do whatever that was. Anywho, we have a rewatch of the Liverpool game over on Patreon. We do our instant reactions live now, so they're live streamed. You can watch them right when the game ends and the video comes out. And so now when you do instant reactions, you can also see the video of the instant reaction. So that's available if you want it on Patreon. And we will certainly be rewatching this game. And it is a week for power rankings. So there'll be a power rankings episode this week for sure, plus some bonus news, but that's down the line. Okay, so let's dive right into it. Here with me now is Clive. You can find him on Twitter at ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
And Paul, you can find him on Twitter. Pause my pants. Hello, pause.
Woohoo!
One thing I just want to ask super quick, if you can give the pod a rating, a review, that would be great. A Blue Wire, who were the network that we're on, they sent out an email saying basically that like podcasts services have updated how they evaluate podcasts, and like they've changed everything again, like they do every once in a while. And so for discovery, they use new reviews as a way for people to discover pods. So if you want to help people discover this pod, you can give it a review. If you give it a bad review, you're going to help them discover that it's a crappy podcast. But I hope you wouldn't do that. You can, of course, because it's free. Well, it's a free world, but please, give us a nice one if you don't mind. Okay. Paul, I want to start with you with something weird just really quickly. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I just thought it was interesting. It's a long season. We are in the title race. The funny thing about this win is everyone's been talking data-wise all season about how data-wise we're the best team. But the one area where there was a bit of a gap, let's be honest, was goal difference. Liverpool and City did stand out. Well, we've closed that. Since the summer training, we've come back and played 4 games. We have a plus 12 goal difference in that time period. Obviously, the plus 6 against West Ham helps, but now we're right there goal difference-wise and all the other data as well. And yet, in a weekend where City won and Liverpool won and Spurs won late, and in a weekend where Granit Xhaka played well for a Leverkusen team that beat Bayern Munich, I saw a tremendous amount of angst and agita and even anger in the fan base. And this is in a week where we had beaten Liverpool comprehensively to really drag ourselves back in the title race. And of course, a week where the media spent their time talking about our celebrations. And I just want to ask you something. How hard do you think it's going to be for us collectively as a fan base to keep our heads and keep our emotions in check through the vicissitudes of a season? Because last season was just a high. We didn't expect it. But this season, I think there's maybe more head loss than I was expecting. Are we going to have to do our collective parts to stay in the game emotionally for what will be ups and downs along the way?
Yeah, people are weird. Like all of us, we're emotional creatures. We kind of don't make a lot of sense. But if you step back, it kind of makes sense. We're at a point now where we're very, 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 very good. The double pivot pod kind of assumes we're about the second best footballing team on the planet. Those are the stats guys who are deep in the stats. They barely watch the football, from what I can tell.
The problem is they have a second to City, who are also in our league. So.
Yeah, but close.
Yeah.
And it's the problem. But that's not the kind of angst we're talking about, right? It's not like, oh, will we be just behind City, or will we get? It's like, it's very much should we have got players in the window? Will we be good enough to stay really in the race? If you look at the stats, if you look at how we're doing, we're clearly, after basically the best part of 2 seasons, good enough to be in a title race with City. Close, who knows? Good enough in the end, we don't know. But the angst is really a reflection of that. It comes up in all sorts of other forms, worrying about all sorts of other things, but it's really, we have just accepted that we're really, really good, that we should be in the top 2, and anything that looks like it might take us out of it, we panic and we worry, and that's what happens when you get good. That's how people react. They're looking for the thing that might trip you up, And that's human nature, and that keeps you alive in the jungle with snakes and tigers and stuff. You just say, okay, we're settled, we got it good. Now we start looking for the thing that might trip us up, and you obsess about it, because that's the difference between success and failure. And we
Yeah.
have no control over it, but we get to panic about it.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, if we go on to win all our remaining games by a comfortable margin in both the Champions League and the Premier League, I think the fan base will hold together quite nicely. If anything else happens, it'll be interesting to see how we manage our way through it. But we should be riding a high. We're the form team in the Premier League right now. We've come back from warm weather training, and look at the difference. Look at the burst Saka has. Look at the form that Ben White has rediscovered. Right. Look at the way Kai Havertz continues to grow into the team, and Declan Rice bestrides the pitch, and Leo Trossard has been integrated. And it's just really, really clear how that break was used to get us back into just a groove. Because I don't know that we were ever playing poorly. I just think it wasn't going for us. But there were certainly players that looked like they were riding the edge of whatever that red line is of fitness and energy. Clive, the unfortunate part is there are some players who are on the other side of the red line, the actual injured side. So put yourself in the headspace. It's pre-kickoff, and we're playing West Ham, and it's a bit of a bogey side. They knocked us out of the League Cup. They beat us at home in a game, to be fair, where I think we were more dominant than people gave us credit for, but so be it. Declan Rice, seemed impacted by it. Mikel has struggled a bit with David Moyes, and this is a fixture last season where we took a 2-0 lead and turned it into drop points that really, really seemed to be a hammer blow in the title race. And then we get the news of seven first-team starters out for this game. Now, to be fair, some of them we didn't expect to have. Thomas Partey, Fabio Vieira, Jurrien Timber. But Jesus, we thought might make it. Nope. Tomiyasu. Nope. Zinchenko. Nope. It, put us in a bit of a tough spot. Jorginho not fit enough to start, which some of us thought he might keep his place. Good point. Clive typed that into the chat. Don't want to pretend I had that information handy at this time of the day. So what were your thoughts at that time? I looked at the bench and I was like, whenever there's a player on the bench I haven't heard of, which I believe his name is Bandera. Not familiar with that academy player, although I'd heard of Nwaneri, and we'll definitely come on to him later. What were your thoughts on the lineup we put out, but also just the piling up of absences when you looked at that lineup before the match?
Yeah, the lineup sort of picked itself. Once you worked out the reasons why certain people weren't there, it's like, okay, it sort of makes you settle to the lineup. And I suppose the interesting thing was after the Liverpool game when Havertz played centre forward, I wasn't sure who's going to play centre forward out of him and Trossard, but then I stopped caring because we seem to be back on the carousel big time rotation wise. So does it really matter? What does matter is we have the right balance of player. So we have to physicality with our 4 centre backs. We have Rice sitting in front, so we can do what we like there. We can cradle that, or we can just go into a 3-2 or a 2-3. Doesn't really matter as long as we have those bodies there. I suppose the big thing for me, really thinking about it, was okay, how are we gonna progress the ball? And I had an inkling that Odegaard may drop a little bit more, but Odegaard was not just dropping a little bit more, he was basically wherever the ball was. After minute 15, he decided, I'm going to run this game. It's one of his favourite grounds. He always seems to do well there. I'm going to run this game. And so his movement was really interesting to watch. What I found really nice tactically from this game was how they obviously had a plan when we were settled defensively. So you'd watch Havertz would drop into a midfield 2, whereas last week at Liverpool he was in the front 2 press. And when we had settled attack, Havertz and Trossard would flip one side to the other. So clever use of Havertz' physicality. Make sure he's on the XG received side of things, Elliot, when we got good attack. But we need his height and physicality to protect our backline. We flip him back there. And I just had a rewatch of the first half just now. And what's really keen, you notice straight away, is how they appreciate each other's strengths and they move cohesively. So Trossard decides I'm going to go high. Havertz just goes deep. And Odegaard, they just work as a 3 together. And I thought that Havertz did the interview. He said, there's no ego in this team. And I watched this game this morning. I thought, That's exactly it. There is no ego. If someone needs to go back into right back position to cover somebody, they do it. There's no drama about it. And while we're watching it as fan analysts and saying, oh, do you notice how he moved? None of that happens unless you like each other. Unless you like each other and you respect your teammates. And that, for me, is the key thing since Dubai. This team don't just like each other, they love each other. And they're working in that way. And we can see the extra spring in everyone's step since that trip, really, basically.
Yeah, no question. Paul, any thoughts on how we set up? I think it's interesting because I'm seeing, I think, and I could be wrong, this might be post-hoc analysis because the game got a little bit fun, right? After we scored 3 and then 4 and so on. But I think there's more shifting around. I know I saw Martinelli pop up on the right side. I think I see Bukayo Saka occupying central spaces more. Kai and Trossard definitely swapping roles. We know that Odegaard will drop deep to collect the ball, which he was doing at times when West Ham did try to press us early. And it was sort of interesting because West Ham didn't just drop into their shell initially. I think they came out to play, but they just couldn't play. And to be fair to them, I think Luis Paqueta is their best player. And without him, they had no hope of contesting the midfield. He's actually given us trouble. He's a player I think that could play at any of the big teams. And without him, they really couldn't do anything combatively in midfield. So thoughts on how we set up with the players we picked, and if what I'm seeing is something you're seeing as well, which is a bit of an opening to the players to be a little freer in their roles, and especially in the attacking third, kind of swap around places and be a little more dynamic positionally.
I think this was very different. I mentioned in the IR, for the first 5 or so minutes of the game, I had some stuff going on at home. So I was watching the game, but not as closely as I thought I was. And suddenly I'm looking and I'm like, I have no idea who's playing where.
You should have waited to have those things go on the last 20 minutes of the game because you could have done whatever the hell you wanted at that point.
I started some projects in the second half of the game, a bit like those fans who wandered off down the bridge for West Ham. I had literally no clue. I was like, I don't know. I wish I'd seen the kickoff so I might know where they were supposed to be starting. Odegaard was so deep. I thought he was playing in a 2 in midfield with Rice. I thought it was like, and he was playing to the right of Rice. It was almost like he was in the Jorginho spot. But then he wasn't. Then he was up the pitch. But early on, when we were playing deep from the back, he was very deep. But you'd see Havertz there because it turned out he was actually a bit of a left 8 in this game. I saw Trossard early on dropping deep in there. Moving around. Martinelli as well was making runs. The other guys are space guys. I think Havertz moves to space, pockets of space, and Trossard is the falsest of nines. And Arteta talked after the game about that particular Kai and Trossard thing. That could either be a nightmare or it could work really well. If you have two guys who are continually looking to move into pockets of space because that's their superpower, you either get guys clashing and kind of nobody ever being where they should be, or this kind of dynamism. And you could imagine how it could work with Odegaard, Havertz, and Trossard. It could either be a mess or it could be this thing, which is those guys are continually looking at the right moment for the right pocket of space, and that opens up everything for everybody else. We saw Saka moving inside. We saw Martinelli once or twice in midfield or centrally doing things that maybe didn't particularly suit him, but also really aggressive running through the middle. There's that beautiful clipped cross from the right-hand side. How does he end up there with another really aggressive run through the center up towards the right? There was a level of dynamism. Like Jesus will move a little to the left and interchange with the left 8. But those guys, you look at the touch map for Havertz and you look at the touch map for Trossard, it's not moving to one side and creating space. It's moving everywhere.
Yeah.
And it was just a blur.
Yeah. I mean, and nothing sums that up more than the penalty, which comes from Trossard playing a stunning ball. I assumed it was Odegaard because of the place on the pitch it came from, or Jorginho, who wasn't playing. But it wasn't. It was our number 9, presumably, from deep, playing in our right wing, right over the top from a left half space run in behind the defense. And what a ball that was. Trossard is a special player. We'll come on to that more in a bit. By the way, this was a day for fun songs, and I think it's a new one for me. I don't remember hearing it, but I don't know if you picked up on the "Who Put the Ball in the Back of Your Net" song. Did you pick up on that one, Clive? Have you heard that one before? Who put the ball in the back of your net? Half our fucking team did.
I did see it online. Yeah, I did see it.
Yeah. You can check them all out. There was the streaming out of the fans. I don't know if you saw it, but the Odegaard. There's a picture of Odegaard with Stuart McFarlane's camera, and it's a picture of him from behind taking a picture of Stuart. And someone overlaid that of him taking a picture of the West Ham fans streaming out. So it's a hell of a funny picture. There were good memes on the day. It was a memeable day for sure. Clive, I think we can dispense with too much of the analytical, tactical talk and get into individual performances. But before we do, I want to give you one more swing at it, because the dominance that we are displaying really is something, and people have been saying it all season, but because the goals haven't been flying in, I think there's been a resistance to it. There's been but it's dominant, it's sterile domination, or it's dominance without goals. But we did need 3. Well, I was going to say set piece. We had 3 goals before we had scored an open play goal in this game. But the thing I came to realize, I think, is we wind up with set piece goals because you know what? We face such deep blocks and we push teams back so much, we get a lot of corners, right? We wind up with a lot of corners. We wind up with the ball going out for corners and things like that. And if you have enough corners, that becomes a good route to goal. So I think that's the symptom, right? The symptom is our dominance, and the result is set piece goals. But do you have a thought on what we were doing in this game to push them back, to keep them confused? They tried to play a little early. They couldn't, and then they just got absolutely battered.
Yeah, I think they set up negatively. And when you have, I think his name's Ben Johnson, actually, he plays left. He's a right back that played left wing, basically to stop Saka. That tells you what their plan is on that side. They were looking to go for Kiwior a little bit, kicking to his side. He held up his end really well, apart from first early stages, and we just kept taking the ball from them. I think when Paul's talking about Martinelli moving over to the right wing, and we're all seeing a little bit more rotation. But when you look at that, Paul, you'll look at your top of your screen and you'll see Havertz playing left wing, where Martinelli is over on the right wing. And so this is what I mean about having no ego. Don't worry, I'll do your job that you've now left. We've got to keep our position intact. I'll be the exterior guy. You go there and have some fun in the interior. Get on the ball, turn around, move it, get close to Saka, create a 2-winger problem for them. Elliot, you said in the past about, how about some of the wingers just swap over sometimes? And I've always been a little bit sort of not sure about that. I'll be honest.
Is that how I sound to you?
Well, just in my mind, I think, you can't just. What I was saying in my head, I'm thinking, if you swap them over, but you play the same way, you're just changing foot, and you're crossing into the same block. So I wasn't really thinking that. But if you start roaming and they start to play together and start combining together, that's more interesting. So in this game, we have this picture of Trossard and Havertz, sort of like, playing really well together. I just checked the passes. I think Trossard passed to Havertz twice. And so, but we couldn't keep our eyes off them, their movement. And so it's their intelligence and movement which opened West Ham up. Do you see what I mean? It doesn't mean you have to pass to each other to create a combination. And what I've learned this year more than any other year is how this team effectively works off the ball, and not just defensively, but attacking wise. And what we did differently to West Ham in the home game, where we got excited, pushed them back, and just ran into their box. So we ran into the crowd. And so it's a crowd scene. They just stood there. They had the goal. They stood there and said, we're just not going to let you even see the goal, and barricaded. What we did this time is that we spent a bit more time on the edge of the area and then went in quite late, combined outside, and then arrived on the edge of the area and created shoot opportunities, inverted crossing opportunities, which led to corners. Then they have to challenge us. We led to free kicks. And I didn't think we ran into the space like kids. We didn't run to the penalty spot. We waited, combined, and waited, and then ran through at the right time. Much more intelligent use of space. And their block didn't feel as low, because we were controlling on the edge of the area with people that were all good on the ball. So they have to come out and engage. And if they come out and engage, we then ran in. And suddenly I could see grass in their box. Mate, in the home game, I couldn't see a thing but their bodies. And they got more and more engaged and more ferocious defensively and played very, very well in their box. In this game, they couldn't handle our ability just outside it with ball-dominant players like Trossard and Odegaard and Saka and Martinelli. They couldn't handle them, and they wanted to come out and meet them. And as soon as they did that, we ran in and we took them, and it was beautiful to see, mate. Beautiful.
I agree. It was beautiful to see. Whatever anybody wants to say, it was absolutely beautiful to see. We broke some records, by the way. This is the joint heaviest home defeat in West Ham's history. Going back to 1963 was the last time they suffered a defeat this bad. It's our biggest away win since the 30s. I think 1935 I saw. And, I just want to maybe take a second, Paul, to celebrate Mikel Arteta before we get into the individuals. Manager conversations are so fraught. Always. I think it's funny, right? You lose a game, it's a player's fault. You lose 2 games, it's the manager's fault. And you lose 3 games, it's the owner's fault, right? I mean, United get on a 3-game losing streak. They got the Norwich scarves out. That's how that works, right? And so we do tend to climb that ladder very quickly. And there have been some grumblings of frustration with Mikel this season, which I think is a little bit silly, if I'm being honest. But, everybody's entitled to feel the way they feel. But I don't know. He just guided us to our biggest away victory since the 30s, our biggest ever away victory in a London derby. A team that has been a bit of a bogey side for us. He did it with 7 first-team players out. He did it by using players in positions you wouldn't naturally necessarily associate them with and still managed, not just both control and dominance, right? 70% possession, but 25 shots, 6 big chances, and 3.59 XG. Oh, and by the way, on the defensive side of the ball, 0.22 expected goals, just 1 shot on target, no big chances, 5 total shots for West Ham. Were they bad? Sure. They weren't this bad. We made them this bad. And I'm just curious your feelings about Mikel, who maybe is almost flying under the radar a little bit. And then you look at all of the data, and I don't care what your data is. Goals allowed, goal difference, expected goals allowed, expected goals for, expected goal difference, possession. You start to see an Arsenal that is at the absolute top, tippy top, world-class, world-class teams. He's really developed something here that feels also very durable, regardless of the players that are playing. I'm not saying you could put any players in and it works, and we made a lot of subs and the game kind of fell apart, to be fair. But with a lot of players missing, this team still looked like it could execute on the plan. I think he's built something that we probably should pause and appreciate for a minute here in between all of this angst about can we win a title,
Yeah, even I, great booster of Mikel Arteta, though I haven't felt the need for a long time, but you're right, he gets a lot of criticism. I take him for granted. Another interesting quote in his thing when he was talking about Kai and Trossard was basically that, if you like, he drew it up. This is kind of what he pictured, but it's down to the guys to execute. And the tone of it was, and boy, did they, right? And how often has he set something up in his mind? And it's a great plan, but it just doesn't play out on the day. Your battle plan is a great plan till it encounters the enemy. And so, look, he's been setting us up great. For us to go out there and bang in 6 goals against a team that has been tough at home, is a tough opponent of us, is up for it, has done well against us. And as you pointed out before, the way we celebrated, keeping the clean sheet, or that moment towards the end where they kind of got in, Kudus kind of got in to the byline and rounded us, and you had 4 or 5 guys descending on him, determined to make sure this wasn't a 6-1 or a sloppy. It got a little sloppy at the end, 6-2. The standards, the levels, what it takes to get on this pitch as a young academy player, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. You don't get on the pitch here without doing it on and off the pitch when you come on. The seriousness. We all remember the Nuno Tavares thing where he got yanked at like 32 minutes against Forest in an FA Cup game, I think it was. and actually was trying to get him off after 27 minutes. You could see him. It took him 3-4 minutes to get him off the pitch. Like, if you're not in the game with the other guys, at least with your best efforts tuned in, you're getting yanked. You don't get on the pitch, standards levels, and we've just gotten so used to it. But back in the day, this would have been 4-0 and we would have settled for it. Or we would have got to 5-0 and then we let in a sloppy goal, 1 or 2. But we brought on, did we use 5 subs? It felt like we used 5 subs, still kept a clean sheet, still totally dominated them. And that's really important for your standards across the season. This isn't a one-off game. It's a series of games. Yeah, I think, look, and the whole out of shape thing, the kind of off-ball shape thing has got to a point where we know it. We look at it. We see the shape of this team. We see, like, I listened to the American commentators for this game, and they never stopped talking about our out of possession shape. Everybody's got the message that this is a phenomenally well drilled team. Kind of the world knows it. This is what we're up against, and you see it with the ball, without the ball. He's never going to get the credit because a lot of it at this point is taken for granted and it's kind of unseen. But the standards, the levels are there.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no getting around that. And I'll say a few things here that come to mind for me. First of all, you come off a win like we had over Liverpool, where the celebrations were so under the microscope. And I think it sets you up perfectly for, for the reverse trap game, right? The low after the high. And the season that came to mind, and I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself from the instant reaction, so apology to patrons, but the season that comes to mind is the Leicester season, where we had that huge high. I think it was on Valentine's Day. Welbeck, there's your fairy tale, where we beat Leicester. And what were the results after that? I want to say we dropped points to Swansea and then United in consecutive games after that, something along those lines. If Tim was on, he'd tell me the scores, the scorer, the attendance, what seat he was in, what the weather was like. But sadly, we don't have all that. You know, we couldn't maintain the level from that high that we hit. And not only did we maintain it here, we came out with an anger to put things right from the home game, to put things right from the reverse fixture last season. You know, I think it is really hard for a manager to keep a team focused week in, week out with the relentlessness of the Premier League. And whatever you want to say about the results we get, I feel our performances are incredibly consistent for the most part. So yeah, kudos to Mikel. I think just building something really brilliant. And when you look at what other teams are dealing with managerially, and, you know, when deciding what to stick with, I look at United trying to talk themselves into Erik ten Hag being good. And like, there's so much evidence that he isn't, but they're just going to stick with it. Because what's the alternative? Just keep rotating through them. So yeah, I think it's a good place that we're in. Let's face it. Clive, I think one of the interesting things here, let's jump into a weird kind of technical component of this, but I think it's a fun part of this. We get 2 goals from center backs, Saliba and Gabby. And how good is Big Gabby? My goodness, he's become... I don't think he's underappreciated anymore. Let's put it that way. I think he's appropriately appreciated. But it's both from Declan Rice delivery. I don't know which is better, the corner delivery, that free kick delivery is just, you have to score that. Now, look, the West Ham defending is poor. Is it Zuma who drops and plays everybody onside? Fine, so be it. But that is dropped on a sixpence, I think, as you would say, Clive. So what do you think of that little wrinkle of discovering Declan Rice, one of our biggest, tallest players, actually being the guy to deliver set pieces when they're on our attacking left side of the pitch? He's been excellent at it.
Yeah,
2 assists in this game.
And the Palace game, I think, was the first time I saw it live. And it was up the clock end. He took a corner. I'm not sure if I can't remember. I think we might have scored from it. Gabriel scored from it. But it came over like a bullet. I thought, he couldn't fail to. I asked the guys I sit next to, a guy called Trevor I sit next to, I said to him, that was Rice taking that. And we had a little argument about it. Because that's what we do. And then, and it was. And no one questions it anymore. I think the set piece stuff is brilliant. You know, the Man United home game, fantastic movements there, all analysed on match a day, and they change in the week after, no problems. And then they can't see what we're doing. They do a lovely thing, something that Ben White does if you watch, and it's not just Ben White, other people do as well. They run into the goal. So you start outside of the goal on the back post and you run into the goal. What's the area where you can't be marked? No defender will go into. He'll never drop into the goal behind the line. So you can run into the goal and then come out of the goal and reposition yourself where you like. Then you are now an unmarked player and the problem. So we've done this to go from back post to front post, run inside the goal, so behind the keeper. In this game, Ben White ran into the goal and then came out of the ground like a hedgehog, come out of the ground right next to the keeper, and the keeper then can't move. He freezes, back post header goal. Right? So it happened 3 or 4 times. So that principle of running into the goal and shifting your position, then being a problem for their zonal defense, their man marking defense, it's just genius. Right? Who thinks of that? Who thinks of that? As soon as you see it, you think, oh, that's so smart. That's the one area they're not going to go. And it's like that sort of stuff I really enjoy, how they assess and analyze other teams and what they do, where they put their big players and how they shift, move, block and go to the other place in the box where they're not going to be and then affect them as they want to travel to meet the ball. It's just brilliant. And we can come up with different systems. It doesn't really matter because we're going to change them. But those principles of really analysing your position, you can see that and in what we're doing because it's becoming successful. And the numbers are there, aren't they? And again, it's about respecting the game. I can remember when Thomas Partey started to do long throws. And I'm thinking, what are we doing that for? We're the Arsenal. We don't do long throws. That's for Stoke. That's the way we've been brought up, isn't it? Right? And but by respecting every aspect of the game to say that can help us, let's practice it, makes the fans, makes me be far more forgiving. But when things go wrong, if I can see a team really trying everything to be effective, to score, and not saying that that's beneath me, I love that. So yeah, he, Arteta, and the coaching staff have brought that into my life in the last 18 months or so, and it's great. Wonderful.
Yeah. And I think for Declan Rice to, slay the dragon a little bit of the West Ham reaction to him, he got some claps when he took the corner. I think he got some appreciation from the West Ham fans in the end. It reminded me of something, and please, people, don't roll your eyes out of your head. I'm not saying that Declan Rice is Michael Jordan, but I was at Madison Square Garden when Michael Jordan dropped the double nickel, the 55 points against the Knicks, 113, 111, a famous Michael Jordan performance. And it was in the heat of an absolutely hated rivalry. Jordan had kept the Knicks from being able to win titles during seasons they definitely would have won titles, and the New York fans did not like him at all. He got clapped off that night, standing ovation. At least where I was sitting, everybody was clapping him off, which was not something that happened to Michael Jordan at the Garden. I think it was one of those, all right, fair play. You're the GOAT, and just for Rice to be so good, 2 assists, stunning goal from outside of the box, dominating the midfield, cleaning everything up. And I think their fans, it was a moment for them to say, you know what? This guy was our player and he still talks nicely about us and he moved on to a level that he wasn't going to hit with us. Fair play. Helped us win a European trophy. I think there was a moment of reconciliation almost, at least for the 17 fans that were left when they clapped him. So that was nice to see. Paul, Clive, come back on that.
No, I was just thinking about what Paul said earlier, actually, about standards. I think it's a really interesting discussion and a deeper discussion. And Declan Rice brings standards about what you do when the ball is lost. And this is a conversation, Paul knows where I'm going. Standards of what it takes to play for this club. Yeah, it's as simple as that, right? And to be successful. And he's bringing different things that we haven't previously measured and seen as a measurement for success. And I sent a joking tweet saying, "Oh, the standards of this club are slipping. I swear I saw one of the players' socks roll down." Do you know what I mean? And we were like, but behind my thought was exactly where you are, Paul, about the standards were so high in everything that we did. And it's like I was trying to pick on something that was negative because there was nothing. And I do think there's something in that discussion which we'll no doubt have as we podcast in the future.
Yeah. By the way, Mikel on Rice's set piece ability Whether it was one of the reasons we signed him, yeah, it was something that we knew and we could imagine. It depends who plays in the team, how much height, presence, and physicality we have inside the box to make the right decisions. He certainly has the delivery. He's used to it here at West Ham as well, and he's done it in the national team. It's another thing that we can add to his game on if the players feel they're pushing the standards every week. Yes, because we know these standards and the level we are facing. We need to be at this level if we want to have any chance to be successful. And on the ruthlessness the team showed, that we want to learn, that we want to be better every single week, and that we are not satisfied. After the Liverpool game, we have to show now that we have the capacity to replicate that level or be better. And that's the way the boys trained the whole week. The kind of thing that a manager can say, and you can say he's paying lip service, but it shows in the performance. I'm a little ashamed, Paul. Well, for a lot of reasons. There's so many reasons I could be ashamed. But the reason I'm ashamed right now is we're 35 minutes in or so, and we haven't mentioned Bukayo Saka. I guess he was mentioned in my intro where I said the reputation of a rising superstar was enhanced. I was not talking about Patrick Mahomes. I was talking about a much better sportsman, and that is Bukayo Saka. He's now got 51 goals for Arsenal, 100 goal contributions between goals and assists, and he just looks like, here's what's really funny. When we went on the warm weather break, unfortunately, it came out of a pretty poor period, so there was a lot of soul-searching. But one of the things I remember saying is, we're playing the kind of football that can get us back to where we were last season. But the thing we need is we need a Saka or a Jesus or a Martinelli or all three of them or an Odegaard to get into a form that replicates what we saw from them last season. And Bukayo Saka, in my mind, has certainly come out of that warm weather period looking like the Bukayo Saka of his peaks of last season. Burstier, more dynamic, decision-making that's spot on. And he was sensational again in this game. And I think you talk about absolute poetry. Sports can deliver you a thing that if you wrote it in a movie script, people would say, come on, that doesn't happen. To go back to West Ham in another title race with a 2-0 lead, taking a penalty. Was it 2-0 when he took the penalty? I want to say it was. Or was it 1?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was his first goal. It was 2-0.
2-0, yeah. So with a 2-0 lead, again, taking a penalty, same player, same ground, same place he missed, where we wind up seeing our title challenge falter after throwing away a 2-goal lead, and he buries it. And he was sensational. Almost 2 expected goals, 8 shots. He was all over the place. Bukayo Saka is, he's back. Not that he was ever not great, but he's back to the level that had us talking about him in the same breath as the Salahs and the Haalands of the league. So, first of all, do you agree that he needed to even be back? Do you agree that there's a return to form, and this performance in particular was just at the top drawer of his exceptional talent? Yes, sorry, he scored 2 goals in this game, right? Yeah.
Yep, he did.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, that second goal, the finish, that's the finish of someone who's like, I'm too good for your team. I'm just going to dribble past you and smash it in the back of your net. It was arrogant. I loved it.
It was delicious. He put mustard on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he looks great. A lot of them look great after a little sunshine, a little rest, relaxation in Dubai seems to have really done the trick with them. Clive's talked about this a couple of times in terms of a number of our players who just look levels fitter, fresher, G'd up from where they were.
Yeah, and let me just cut across you real quick, Paul, because I did get it wrong. So he scored the second in this game. So not exactly a mirror image of last season, but still a pressure penalty that he hit. Anyway, keep
one
going.
Of those wobbly mirrors, the distorty mirrors. Like there's lots of different kinds of mirrors.
Mirror.
Yeah, you weren't wrong.
No,
Elliot, you weren't wrong.
There are degrees of wrongness.
There are wrong. And that bit earlier when you said it was funny, it wasn't that funny. I don't think you know what funny is.
Ironic.
But you're not wrong here.
Okay. Thank you.
He's did he need to kind of up his game? Was he out of form? I think with him and Martinelli, I think they're very, very consistent players. And I think when it looks like they're not getting it done, or they're maybe a little out of form, or they've lost a bit here or there, it's usually that they're not getting the options around them that the other team is getting to have 2 or 3 players on them. In this game, there was movement. They were getting to step inside, to move around. And you had the kind of dynamism that you couldn't stick three people on Saka and two people on Martinelli waiting for the ball to be switched to the other side, because you were going to get absolutely done down the middle. They were so worried about what was going on in the middle with the movement that they said, let's see if we can get by with one person. When Saka cuts inside and puts it in the inside of the net, near post, he only has to beat one guy, and that guy isn't on him at that time. He's scrambling across to him. And the movement, the churn, the rotation, that's why you suddenly see Saka and Martinelli pop and think, oh, they're in great form now. They're probably in great form all the time if you give them great chances where they can express themselves and they can feel their game. As soon as you can feel your game, these guys are so talented that, miraculously, they're back in form. I think it's more a reflection of, can we move it? We had a problem quite a few games ago where you'd look at the triangles on either side and say, we need more from those triangles. We also talked about how you need to kind of get through them in the middle. And that's all about movement. And that movement solves almost everything. The standards thing and the movement thing, you got to be really good with really good players to make the movement thing happen, to kind of churn it. Why didn't we just do that? I'm sure the manager drew it up on the board many times. I'm sure he had standards, but the players have got to be there. The players have got to be finding those connections. It seems like that's what we're doing now, and suddenly we're going to see finishing. Oh, look, our players who used to be able to finish last year can finish again this year. It's not all set pieces. They're getting space. They're getting different looks in a game, and the opposition has no idea what's coming next and who they're going to be up against and how they need to combine against them, which two players are going to be behind them, because everything's different. Each look is different.
Clive, as good as Saka was, and he was brilliant, I think it's the whole right-hand side that has sort of... The problem with saying figured things out is it makes it sound like we're in some bad place. We're never in a bad place, but I think it has improved. And I think Ben White and Odegaard both have elevated their game. And so White, Saka, and Odegaard, it's no surprise that with all of them playing better, each of them individually looks better. I think Martin Odegaard is just an immense player. And if you look at the way we attacked in this game, I think it was about 51% up the right-hand side and then about 21% left and 24% central, something like that. But majority of it came up the right-hand side. And I'm wondering what you're thinking of that pod, the right side pod, which really looks like it's starting to sparkle to levels that we remember.
Yeah, it's so interesting how they solve problems. And I have to say, seeing Ben White play this game and drop into centre mid to provide the overloads when we needed it, just to create room for our ball progressors. So if you look at it, no Partey, no Jorginho, no Zinchenko. Now, Partey, okay, we've missed him for the season, but we know he's a build-up king. Xhaka last season, build-up king, so he's not there. We all know that we can't build up when Zinchenko's not there. He's not there. So when Zinchenko's not there, what do? We rely on Jorginho. He's not there. So how do we create those central overloads? By moving Trossard around, by moving Ben White around, coming inside, by moving Odegaard around, and then that frees up the space to get it to Saka where we want him to get it. Eventually, Johnson got tired, couldn't get back in. There's 2-on-1 started in the first 15 minutes. Suddenly it became 1-on-1s. Emerson didn't fancy it on the day, and we're getting in. Odegaard sensed it, that's where the danger was. That's where we could get at them as they're blowing out their arse. So what I'll do, I'll just get on this ball in this side, and I'll just keep punching away at their chin, keep punching away. Saka cross, Trossard should have scored header. Kiwior cross into Saka, should have scored. Saka cross, volley, just saved by the keeper. Just keep punching away on that side until they break. And again, finding solutions to fix a problem that's been caused by injury, build up, fixed. Then we're saying to Kiwior, don't worry, you're not going to do it because you're 22, didn't speak the language very well, maybe not super connected. We'll put you on the outside of the team, and can you take care of their most dangerous attacker? Can you do that? Yeah, you should be able to do it, because otherwise, back to standards again, we haven't got a place for you. So deal with it, but also get involved with the progression side of things. But we're not going to ask you to do something that you can't do any longer. Ben White, you've done it before. You played centre mid. You can come inside. You're good on the ball. And that's what he did. And I love that. I genuinely love that when I see lessons learned and solutions coming on board. And when those players are back in the team and we've got build up, then we'll do something else. But the real skill is the selection of the squad and the players and their ability to take on different roles without worrying about their own personal numbers. It's for the group. And I think it was excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, well said. There's a lot more I want to get onto. Some individual performances I want to talk about. Obviously, Nwaneri's cameo, a little bit of big picture stuff too that I think we can do. But I can't do that if I don't make sure that you are browsing in the safest way possible. That's a thing I have to do because I care about you, right? I mean, if I didn't care about you, I'd say, browse however you want. Doesn't matter to me. I don't care. But because I do care, I'm going to tell you about NordVPN. Okay, so first of all, here's the link, nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. I use Nord. This is probably the thing we promote on the pod the most, that gets the most questions afterwards about, hey, can I get the link? Can I get the code? Because everybody wants to use a VPN. You know that it's good to have private browsing. They have threat protection, so they make sure that you don't wind up with viruses and spyware and malware and all that. And given that many of us who are football fans sometimes find ourselves watching games at links that maybe aren't the safest and soundest, then this is a thing that you definitely want to be using. But the thing that I use Nord the most for, honestly, is browsing in other countries. Like, match of the day is not a thing I watch all the time, but after a 6-0 victory, I'm like, I could check that out for sure. Or after one of our rivals have lost. So I use Nord and I say I'm browsing in the UK, log into BBC iPlayer and watch it, right? If I'm over in the UK and I need to watch a game, over in the US, we can watch them all. So I browse back in the US, log into my Peacock account and watch whatever game I want. You can browse Australian Netflix if you want. It's up to you. So here's the cool part. There is a 30-day money-back guarantee, but what they're offering with our promo code is 4 bonus months. 4. That's a lot of months. It's a third of a year. All right? 4 bonus months. So, that's pretty incredible. 4 extra months. So, what's the code? Yeah, nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Go to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. Clive, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Okay. Clive, let me stay with you just for a second. Leo Trossard. There are certain things you do when you're building a squad that are obvious. Buying Declan Rice is obvious, right? Getting it right in your academy. You need to do that every once in a while, right? Like Trent Alexander-Arnold at Liverpool or Bukayo Saka at Arsenal. There are players that you buy who are stars or who are well-known, let's say it that way, like Gabriel Jesus, and injuries aside, they give you roughly what you expect from a player of that quality. The harder thing to do is buy a player who isn't going to be a nailed-on starter because you have starters in the positions that player plays. And yet, they are so good that they could displace the starter in certain games, or if they start, you don't regret it. You're not concerned about it. I think when you look back at last January and our pursuit of Mykhailo Mudryk and landing on Leo Trossard, I think it is a seminal moment in the Project TM. I think he is an excellent player who, while, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say he's Mohamed Salah. I'm not trying to say he's Erling Haaland. He's that 12th player that can come in and play at the exact same level as the team always plays and sometimes elevate it. And I think he did that in this game. And his goal is out of the absolute top drawer. His assist is out of the top drawer. 2 very different sides of a player's game, and he's got it all. I think we've really been very fortunate to bring this player into the group.
Yeah, for the moment he's come in, he's done something well, and maybe there's something to look at, right? I mean, maybe it's one for Scott, is our goals for when he plays. I think he does unlock teams. We have good scoring days when he plays. He doesn't always play well, not all the time, particularly from the start. Every time I get sold, he does a disappearing performance. Then it comes on late in the next game, just like best player on the pitch for 20 minutes. So the consistency of perfection is not there, if you know what I mean, when you just think you're... Mm-hmm. But maybe there's a question to be asked as we're unlocking this team, and he's a lot more oil in the engine than we maybe realise. And I just wonder because we have this team in our head, our front three balance, etc. And we pick teams. This player was fit, he'd play and he'd play. And none of us have Trossard in our first 11 per se. But when he's playing like this, he's asking questions. He's asking real questions. And when it gets to squeaky bum time, to coin a phrase, you want people who can kick the ball in the middle of their boot. Their technique is solid and they hit it in their laces with both feet. Some of his passing, left foot, right foot in this game, not waiting for it to get onto his good foot. Timing is important. Shooting's just always perfect. I really came off the seat when he scored that goal. He's an interesting player that manages this level really well and manages the tension in his own way. He just struts around that pitch, nice and relaxed, knocking the ball off, and seems very confident on the same IQ levels as the other players. So, an interesting player that maybe we're not fully appreciating. We've all got Odegaard in our heads. Some people like Havertz, some people don't. No problem. It'll take time. Martinelli, we know what he can do. Saka, we know what he can do. Jesus, when he's fit, we know what he can do. But this guy, do we really know him? And, properly? And are we really appreciating him? And it's not just the numbers, Elliot. I think from a team play perspective, I think there's more for us to dig into on this. Well, for me, definitely. I'll put my hand up and say, yeah, I really like him. But any time I'm picking a team, he's not in it. And maybe that's the question I need to ask myself. Why am I doing that? Why am I doing that? And I think maybe we have to look a bit deeper.
The way he finishes that chance on his right foot. I mean, look, I want to be a little careful because some of the defending from West Ham was really shambolic. And like for Saka's goal, it's some of the worst defending I've ever seen. I mean, he literally just carries the ball right to this body once inside the box and slams it in the back of the net. It's disgusting. And, Trossard, the way he shakes his man in the box, it's not great. But you see bad defending all the time. You see players miss chances. Just the thing with Trossard is you really feel the finishing's there. Now, look, you say that because you memory hold the misses. I know Clive in particular was very mad about the missed header at a time when the game was still being contested. But yeah, ultimately this was no contest. And the thing I also liked is that we continued. From 2 we made it 3, from 3 we made it 4, from 4 we made it 5, from 5 we made it 6. He says, proving that he can count up to 6. I will not try to go past that lest I get it wrong. But yeah, it's that ruthlessness and that willingness to maintain the standards. Paul, I don't want to go too far on a performance that I think is peripheral, but I think it's worth calling out because players get hammered when they're not good. And then if they're at the level, they tend to just get overlooked, and that's Kivior. I don't know that Kivior is a left back per se, but at Arsenal, you're going to have to play the position where you're needed, and he's needed at left back right now. It sounds like Tomiyasu is back in contention for Burnley. Zinchenko maybe not. Jesus maybe not. Unfortunately, as that starts to stretch on worryingly. But, and then that could be wrapping him in cotton wool to try to get to the Champions League. We'll see. But Kivior played this game at the level you need to play to win a game 6-0. And, they have some tricky players going the other direction that can cause you problems. I thought he looked really good. In fact, he had one of our biggest chances, didn't he? I want to say he wound up center of the box and had a really good chance in this game as well. But that's a complex role we give. And I think Mikel did something clever, and Clive has called this out. We've brought Kivior in the past and asked him to invert and play the Zinchenko role, and that hasn't worked. So what do? We let him keep the width. We bring in players who give us more central occupation, Trossard and Kai, and let White come inside a little more. And Kivior can play the game a little bit more like he knows how. And all in all, I think you got to give the guy credit. I think he was definitely at the level and a really good contributor.
Yeah, interesting one. So you guys were quite high on him. I thought he looked a little tense, ropey.
Interesting.
To begin, I think he settled. He had a simple. It's not a simple role, but a relatively simple role in terms of a defender's outlook.
We simplified it for him. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so I think he ended up having a good, solid game, to your point, that suited him. And yes, he was good. He held up his end. Our defense looked good. They got nothing out of us as a unit. And it does seem like an obvious thing. Why doesn't Mikel use a guy like Ben White from the right, who is one of our favorite candidates for this season and last season's? He could play as a DM for us. like Ben's your man, right? Center back, or which center back, full back, or goalkeeper could be your DM because you needed one. Ben White's maybe the obvious choice. The thing that is, though, and I think the reluctance to why Arteta never had, like, is he blind? Is he stupid? Probably both. Why has he not played Ben White as the inverted fullback? And in this game, he didn't do it very much. He just did it 2, 3 times, 4 times, I don't know. But it wasn't like it wasn't Zinchenko. He wasn't right. There was nothing obvious about it. It kind of, when it flowed naturally, he did it. It wasn't a very pronounced thing. I think in this game, Arteta looked at it and said, it doesn't need to be a big thing here. I've got Trossard, Odegaard, Havertz. I'm going to use those guys as the guys who drop into midfield and give me my extra man. I'm going to do it that way, not pulling in. I can push Ben White up the outside and get an extra attacker there. So it was a different way to get to the same thing. I think the problem with using Ben White as the inverted fullback on a regular basis is what he really wants in his back three is he wants Saliba central from a distribution standpoint, and that pushes Saliba out to the right. And now you got Gabriel as the guy who should be distributing centrally, and Gabriel does great, better than most of us expect in terms of his distribution. But he's not your John Stonesy, your Saliba. Why go to John Stones when you got
just
Saliba
go right
here?
to his partner, yeah.
Or he's not VVD, he's not Saliba in terms of distribution. And like, it just throws it off. I think that's why he's shown why he has this huge blind spot that's not a blind spot. He knows what he wants from that back. He went and got a goalkeeper who's a better distributor, better with his feet. He loves Saliba centrally, with Gabriel pushing up on the left-hand side as a kind of a CB, FB, and it just throws it off. So he did it this time because he's got Havertz, Trossard and Odegaard all milling around in a carousel of wonderfulness. James Bench talked about the 3-10s, which is another way of looking at it. And basically you had 3-10s, 3-10ing here. And that gave, you don't want to over-egg the pudding. Probably Zinchenko would have been too much in this game. So, yeah.
Yeah. And look, pre-match, any of the angst that we had around availability or unavailability, I think certainly one of them would have been, wow, no Zinchenko, no Tomiyasu, Kivior at left back again. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the side Kudus attacks down, right? So, a player that's given a lot of people trouble and really was pretty quiet in this game. So, kudos to them. By the way, a lot of good memes that I mentioned earlier on out of this game, and a lot of good content. Poorly Drawn Arsenal did a great drawing of Saka reacting to Rice's goal. It's great. Puts his hands on his head and just in awe. Rice, his technique is really something, because you think about the delivery from the corner, the delivery from the set piece. Think about, was it Chelsea, the open net goal from outside the box? That's a tough, right? First time running.
What you do is you kick your standing leg away. When you kick your standing leg away, you get the curve. So watch Ward-Prowse take a corner. Very similar thing. You whip it, but you kick your standing leg away, and that gets the curl on it. And Beckham was obviously the master of that, right? So, he's got a unique technique when he goes that way, and it's just cool, just cool.
Or if you're Douglas Luiz playing against United, you try to kick it with your left foot, and you can't do it because you have no left foot, and you gift United somehow a victory. There were some really jammy wins, by the way, from rivals. United and Spurs come to mind, and Brighton. I'm sorry, but to have a counterattack in the last 10 seconds of the game where you're able to kick it into an open net, that's textbook bad coaching. And I don't even know, but I can tell that ain't it. You definitely don't want to do that. Clive, before we get to the subs, and Nwaneri is definitely a talking point. It seems funny that we haven't really talked about the guys who opened the scoring. Goals for the center back partners. They have, I guess they didn't open the scoring. Saliba opened the scoring, then Saka had the penalty, as we indicated, then Gabby got a goal. 2 set-piece goals for our center backs, another domineering performance at the back. In a week where Gabby has been talking a little bit about the way the season started, someone posted a £170 million bid from Saudi Arabia for Gabby had come in. I don't believe that for a second. I believe that a bid had come in. I don't believe for a second it was £170 million. I mean, I love Gabby, but that's like project changing money. So I think, you probably have a pretty strong, long look at that. But it's so weird to think that there was a period in the season where he was just sitting on the bench. He and Saliba have formed, I think the best center back partnership in the league. Certainly have the meanest defense. Now, some of that is our out of possession play, but I think they are the meanest center back pairing in the league. And I'm so impressed by them. I love their performance today. Are they somehow underappreciated, or is that ridiculous? Are they appropriately appreciated?
Yeah, not unappreciated by Arsenal people, but I suppose the interesting thing is their ages, right? So one's 22, one's 25. I mean, that's still fairly young for that position.
Yeah.
I do think Saliba was very interesting in this game because, as Paul touched on, he was on occasions more on the right side of a three, on occasions, not consistently, and he doesn't do well in those situations, right? He doesn't. We saw it from the very first game, MetLife, Manchester United. He played right centre back in that game. It was not a good game for him, right? Pre-season, right? But I like him. We like him where we like, in the centre of a three, where we build up. But I thought this is his best game from a right-sided perspective. And if you notice how many dribbles he did, he drove out. Yeah, so he drove out. So that tells you the lane he was in. So he drove out of his hole to collapse people in, to then commit people, to then pop the ball off. Again, recognition of what's on offer to you, right? So don't play the same way as you do when you're the deepest player, the sweeper. Progress the ball. So if he can't find a pass, I'm gonna take it forward, right? So I was really
Clive, there was a
impressed
funny
with
one
him.
where he took it forward, he popped it off to White, and then he kept going, and then his brain clicked in, and he's like, nope. So he like stopped his run immediately, went sprinting back into his position.
Yeah, and that tells you they know their roles, isn't it? So I'm a little bit scared out here. I don't want to be here because this is not in the
air
plan.
got thin. Yeah.
I'm not having Mikel waving his arms from the other side of the pitch to say, "Where the F are you going?" we don't want that, right? So yeah, I thought he adapted really, really well to that role. And that whole right side was an interesting thing. And again, I just, this probably started for me when I started to see the corner being turned in the Liverpool Cup game. That's a travesty. The West Ham home game was also a travesty, for honest. And there's been a few of them, and it has caused a little bit of cloudiness about what we're seeing. And now we can all see things more clearly, and we're starting to look forward and go, hold on a minute. We're fixing all these problems, and we've got all these injuries. What happens when they come back? And what we got to contend with next is midweek games. They're back in the room, very, very quickly, and how form goes after a midweek game. We got midweek game Saturday night, Newcastle, 8:00 kickoff. Mate, that's gonna be lively. So how are we gonna be? Post Porto, what's that gonna look like and feel like? What's the mood gonna be? All these new variables going to come into our mindset. But at the moment, once a week, deal with it. Looking at our shape defensively. We're starting to see things offensively. People are just looking a bit brighter. Will they look bright every 3 days? So those 5 or 6 players we got missing that are due back in the next fortnight or so. We're going to need them. We're going to need them to just keep everybody fresh and rolling along.
Yeah. And I mean, that leads pretty nicely, I think, Paul, into the discussion of the subs in this game. It is a luxury this time of the season when you can take Bukayo Saka off at 67 minutes. Not a thing Mikel does very often. He's had a chance to do it now a couple times. I think he did it against Palace as well, right? He got to come off early. He got to take Declan Rice off at 67 minutes. He took Martinelli and Ben White off at 77 minutes. Trossard came off at 67 minutes, which, by the way, I think tells you a little bit about how the manager's thinking about him now, and maybe is a little bit of a note of how concerned he might be on Gabriel Jesus. Because if Trossard's the guy you're wrapping in cotton wool, you're probably thinking, I'm going to need him again against Burnley, and let's just hope it's because Jesus is being kept fit for the Champions League, where he's always been imperious. So I think it was great that we got the subs on when we did. And the one that obviously everyone is going to want to talk about and have a look at is Ethan Nwaneri. And I think it is a beautiful thing because in a season of people squinting to see some problems, one of the problems is he didn't give the Academy kids minutes in the dead rubber Champions League tie. And look, would I have liked to see the kids in that game? Sure. I don't know. I mean, I think Mikel has made it pretty clear that standards are important. And one of the things about standards also is you don't just gift minutes to academy players. There's a progression, right? You train with the first team. You go from training with the first team to being in a match day squad. You go from being in a match day squad maybe back down to training with the first team or back down to the reserves. That was your first debut. Now your next debut is you make another match day team. And maybe if your standards are high enough and you've trained well enough and the game permits, you get on the pitch. So it doesn't come easy. So you have to keep fighting your way up for it. And let's be honest, training, you've said this, Paul, so I'm stealing your bit, but being in training with these players at this level is like university level course, PhD level course. This isn't training with Unai Emery's ragtag band of miscreants. This is training with one of the best first teams in the world. By the way, Unai Emery Emerying a bit at the moment. So, what do you think of Nwaneri getting on? And what did you think of his debut? Not debut, his cameo, because this isn't a 19 or a 20-year-old. This isn't a 21 or a 22-year-old who, is at that point where they should be breaking in. This is a 16-year-old. This is a different thing. I think the last time we saw this was Jack and Cesc, I think would be the two that come to mind. So what do you think of him playing and what you saw for the 13 minutes he was on?
Yeah, I had to go and I know I said 16 on the pod yesterday. I had to go and check his age because it feels like, what was that then when he came on last year? Was he the
I
first
think he might have
time?
been 16 at that time too.
I think he was 15.
No,
Was he 15?
I think he must have been 15, which was why it was such
Well,
a
his birthday
huge
is
deal.
March, so he's about to turn 17. So it just depends. Yeah. I don't remember when he came on last time.
He's 16 before he's 17, Elliot.
That's
I
how it
got to
works.
pull you up there. Yeah.
He's basically 17, but he is technically 16.
Yeah.
Because he's 16 and until he's 17. And it's just how it works.
We're good at Arsenal. He was really good. Okay, now it's 77 minutes into a game against West Ham where they had, their spirits had left their bodies visibly. You could see them drifting up. But he looked the part. Everything he did was clean, smart, clever. His movement, he just kind of fitted in, and you're like, yeah, this guy's really good. I'm glad he got the nod. There were quite a few other academy players on the bench, but Nwaneri got the nod and the Nawad, and I think it is pretty significant for him. To your point of the discussion we had on the IR, how meaningful is it for the rest of this season and minutes? You'll have to go some. Based on yesterday's cameo, he has the skills, the presence, to actually play some minutes for us. Okay, small sample size, but if the question is how did he do yesterday, he certainly looked like a guy you wanted to give more minutes to. Whether that plays out, I mean, we'd 7 players out yesterday, so you had if you got Jorginho back and maybe one other, maybe doesn't get on the bench. He came on with Cedric at the same time, which is the great undermining of my thrust here. I'm sure Nwaneri felt just the tremendous honor of coming on for the Arsenal, and then looked to his right and there was Cedric, and he's like, oh, okay, I get it. And so he comes on and he was really good. Like every now and then there's a player, and the Elu, the elected, the chosen one, he definitely has it. There's kind of a music that changes when he comes on, a kind of the lights. Truly, this man is the Son of God. There's stuff. Maybe that's all inside me, but I definitely think there's something a little special about this guy. Maybe it's just I've been listening, hearing the vibe that's coming through. Like, it takes something to even get on our summer tours as an academy player. Like, you got to fight to get in here. So yeah, I think it's quite the honor. And yes, I want to go back to my point I made, which is these guys should soak up everything they get in training from Mikel Arteta and the way they play. That's the honor there. Getting on the pitch, that's when you're ready, when you're doing it on and off the pitch, day in, day out. So
I think it was a nice cameo. I think he is trending in the right direction, certainly talented. I was going to stop short of Son of God. That was I
You didn't
didn't
hear
have
that
that on my
music
bingo
yet.
card of praise
You're
today. I
telling me
mean,
you didn't hear the music, the heavenly choirs singing when he came on.
maybe
That's what you're
just a
telling me.
little bit, but it could have been my hangover as well. Clive,
Yeah.
I'll allow you to just also say "Son of God," or you could go a different direction with this if you want.
um, yeah, I've lived a life as an academy parent for 4 years, so I sort of know a little bit about that environment and how things work and how hierarchies work, and one of the key rewards you get if you're showing talent in your games is that you play up. For example, you play up, and sometimes you train up. So you might be under 14, and suddenly he's training with the 16s, and he's seen as a measure of success. Sometimes, sometimes that's technical reasons why you play up. Sometimes it's physical reasons. There's no point in playing with people your own age if you're 6'2". Right, so it's just if you're like 15 years of age, like is it Chido Obi Martin, who's very, 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 very tall for his age, and so he plays up naturally to sort of make sure that he doesn't find it easy at the level that he's playing at. So training with the first team is seen as a measure for success, and before they sign contracts, they want these things to be something that will be considered if they're super talent. Ethan Nwaneri is in the England track. He's in under 17, number 10, scores goals for them. He's going to go up that England track, right? So he is seen as for his age group, top 5 in the country. I'm just guessing there. I could probably say top 3. There's a couple of kids at Tottenham doing quite well, actually. Top 3. He's up there. He's right there. What I find, another thing about dressing rooms, and Mikel Arteta spoke about it, and he often heard me use the phrase, the best selectors of a team are the players. And players don't give the ball to bad players, right? And I can remember when Kiwior was settling in and was a little bit edgy, and they were passing the ball past him, right, to protect him, to not put him under pressure. When players look at a player who can look after it, trust me, you get it. You get the ball. I always look for these little messages because players tell you about the players. They are the selectors. They really know. They don't take any crap. One bad touch in training, mate, you're not getting it. I've watched millions of training sessions. I know, and so to see him look after the ball so smoothly as a 16-year-old with no stress. I mean, crikey, that does bode well for the future. Potentially, positionally wise, he will be the Odegaard type player for Arsenal one day, hopefully, if he kicks on. You can see that position, can't you? The same on that right side of the midfield. He goes 2 ways and he can score. He can travel and he can score. He can whack that ball in his left foot. You watch the youth games, you can see it. He's not going to be a Saka clone. Maybe for this game they chucked him out there to look after him a little bit. But just travel and enjoy yourself. But he's going to be an Odegaard clone, or a 10 in a front 4 diamond, and potentially even on the other side. There's no problem being on his left foot on the other side. But it's going to be an 8 for me. And it's going to be an exciting time watching him. And it doesn't take much to work out. You don't need to be a youth expert or any. Just look at the way the ball just comes into his feet and how prepared he looks to receive the ball. He just looks so natural. He's very talented at it. I don't want to say too much more than that because he's only 16 and I think it's unfair, but he's very talented and he's still to grow into himself. So, yeah, it's going to be great to watch.
Yeah. Apparently the players on the bench were whispering to him to bring Nwaneri on to Mikel. So I don't know if he was planning to do it or not, but the players were trying to get him to do it, which tells you something too. And I do think, look, one of the things that I took away from this about Nwaneri, I am reluctant to anoint anybody who is 16 and has played a few pretty worthless is the wrong way, low jeopardy minutes with the first team. I'm reluctant to anoint them, but he played in the interior a lot. He came into midfield. He carried the ball in those spaces. And I think the easiest thing for an academy player to do is come into a game as a wide forward where it's like, just go attack the fullback 1v1 or just go run up the touchline, right? I think those are easier roles, especially in most teams that don't play positional football. When you start to get in the middle of the pitch in the Premier League level where players are bigger and stronger and quicker and the tempo is different, I think that's hard. And I think he showed, by and large, just a pretty good tempo to his game and understanding, Clive. So I was impressed. Paul, do we have to let you go? I just had a couple more things, but
I got a couple more minutes.
okay. So he did bring Nwaneri on. He didn't bring Rule Walters on, and he's had a number of opportunities to do that this season and hasn't done it. And he brought Cedric on instead. And I know some people were frustrated by that. To me, if you found frustration, any Arsenal-related frustration yesterday, you might want to re-examine things because it's a 6-0 win, stunning goals, great moments, memeable. Nwaneri comes on, everything's brilliant. But, I think it's worth addressing the fact that he chose Cedric to come on over Rule Walters. And I'll just give you my take on it quickly. Cedric might have to play. It's not something we want to hear, but we're very thin at the back. Very, 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 very thin. And whatever you think of Rule Walters, if there's a Premier League game and we need someone to play right back and Ben White can't do it, it's going to be Cedric. If there are injuries. It's not going to be Rule Walters. Not because Cedric is good, but he is a Premier League level player, barely, but he is. Rule Walters is an academy kid who doesn't have the experience. So I think if you're Mikel, you've got to get Cedric some minutes if you can, just in case the guy needs to play. Whereas it is not likely that you are going to need Rule Walters, or not likely that you would use Rule Walters. So while I'd like to see Walters get the minutes, I think Mikel kind of needs to make sure Cedric is capable of playing if called upon. So that's my read on it. Did you put any thought into this at all? Because it didn't bother me at the time, but I saw some people frustrated by
it. Yeah. Management's really easy when all you got to pick is the players you like to see on the pitch. Like Reuel Walters is a much more exciting prospect for us than Cedric is. Cedric is not an exciting prospect for us. So we imagine the great, the possible, the future. But you're the manager of a team, you have a squad, you have a dressing room. There is a hierarchy. There is the vibe behind the scenes. Cedric is a presence. Gasp. Right? He's a professional. He's been around the block. He's doing his coaching badges. There's a whole vibe in the back scene, in the background of a squad. As you said, he may end up actually playing minutes for us at times. I don't see it being 90 minutes, but it could be 10 minutes they want him to come on and, calm yourselves here, do
Paul,
a job for us.
I don't even want to put this in the universe, but if Ben White twists his ankle and has to miss one game, it's Cedric who's starting if Tomiyasu isn't back. So it's like, it's not that remote a possibility, as much as I hate to say it.
Well, it's not that desperate. We've got other players, Elliot.
Do we? I literally don't know who they would be.
Yeah, there is a kind of a calculus that's not as simple as who could potentially have a higher ceiling in the next 6 months. It might be Reuel Walters. But if you're bringing on Cedric, it's because you basically want to stem the bleeding. And he'd make a great tourniquet or tourniquet. I don't know if you pronounce the last T. I don't. Sounds silly, tourniquet. But he could be a great tourniquet. And he'd be an okay tourniquet. So you just have different factors going on, and it's not, which player is more exciting. And Mikel Arteta is definitely not the which academy player might be exciting to put on next guy. You barely get any going on a tour. And usually it was going to Disneyland for our kids, the summer tours. It was like, oh, look, there's 8 or 9 of them, and they're giggling, and they're laughing, and they're climbing on the plane, and they're having fun. Arteta doesn't want people having fun like that, climbing on the plane. It's a serious group. And back to the Reuel Walters should be stoked to train with the first team under Mikel Arteta and learn juego de posición and all the movements. What an incredible thing to have on your resume.
Yeah. Yep. So, Clive, I think that does it for the game, essentially. Which you could have said roughly at halftime. We've actually talked about it longer than it was a contest. But now we try to look into this, and we'll let Paul go. Paul's on Twitter. Pause my pants. Thanks, pause. He's going to turn off his camera and mute his microphone. And once we confirm that those things are done, I will feel better. Those things are done. I feel better. So let's just go big picture a little bit. It's 4 games since the winter break. It's plus 12 goal difference, a 5-0 against Palace, a 6-0 against West Ham, a dominant victory over Liverpool, and I would say a dominant performance against Forest that we made slightly nervy at the end, somewhat stupidly. The only thing I see right now to give me any anxiety, other than who we're trying to chase down the top of the table, is the injury situation. But in terms of the football we're playing and have played all season, and in terms of the trajectory, the arrow is pointing straight up. So let me take your temperature. Where are you right now in the it's back on meter? It feels very, very back on to me right now. How are you feeling about that coming off of 4 straight pretty emphatic performances and emphatic wins since we've come back?
Yeah, I think Liverpool game was the one staring at us, wasn't it? And then we had a couple of games around that game. We wondered if we could get a run of games together, and we've done exactly that. We've done exactly what we'd hoped to do, and we're now well positioned. Probably the bonus has been the goals that we scored, and we weren't saying that before Christmas that we were going to be up there. We quite liked how we looked defensively, and all our XG difference is good, but it was based on our defense really, and but now we're looking very, very good in both sides, and I've had this hope because I'm an optimist. And I said it before, Elliot, but I remember speaking to a City fan last year, and an intelligent guy spoke to me and said, we're watching you guys run your legs out. We don't do that early part of the season. We just play nice and slow. And when we were playing slow, I'm thinking, I wonder if Arsenal are playing the course this year. You're going to have a lessons learned meeting, aren't you, for last season? Because we ran out of legs in the last third of the season, let's be honest. Not just injuries, we ran out of legs. We lost key players in injury, but the players that were left lost their spark, and looked hobbled, and we got ran around. We fixed some of that with our signings this year, and I'm just hoping we're playing the season. We're playing the game as a test match and not a one-day cricket match, if you see what I mean. And it felt a little bit like that last year. We enjoyed it. To watch games that you may not feel so exhilarated has probably brought criticism to us, But if you look at the games that we have lost, mate, we've dominated everyone apart from Fulham, right? So, and that takes a lot too. There were periods against Lons when I wasn't too sure away. We had that game strong. We should have won that game. At least got a point. And so there's been a lot of consistency within the inconsistency, if you see what I mean. So my theory now is just stay in the room. We started the podcast talking about the Super Bowl last night. There's an aura to Patrick Mahomes. There's an aura to the Chiefs. They've developed over time. If you look at people like Van Dijk, you look at people like Alisson, look at Man City, and just say they're too good. They've got an aura. We can't beat them. Well, you have to test people. You have to test their edges. The only way you test them is by being in the room when those key high pressure moments come. And we don't want to be going to City and be 8 points behind. If we are right there, then we can play them with the similar pressure on us. But this year, we are better physically and technically, and we have more ways of playing, and we control more areas of the pitch right the way back from our goalkeeper going forward. So then it becomes a true contest. And we are one of maybe 2 teams in the league that can contest with City consistently. And I couldn't say that last year. So we have made a step forward, and I just hope when those games come in, the April games, that we're close, and then we'll find out. And we'll find out what we've got. Hopefully it won't be an injury we can dive into an excuse about. We'll say, okay, this is what we need to add. Is it a soft skill? Do we need a little bit more? We'll find out what it is. We'll find out. And that's the bit I can't wait to find out exactly what it is that we're lacking. And someone's shouting at their phone right now, we just need a centre forward. And they could be right. They could be right. It's a quick fix. Someone who can stick 30 goals on. Mate, every team wants that. But with the group that we have, we're going to find out exactly what's missing, or we'll find out there's a lot here to be discovered. And that's the exciting thing. When people say things like Elliot, they say, oh, I love it. I love the journey. Well, this is all part of it. Do you really love it? Or do you love the journey when it all goes your way? Do you know what I mean? Do you really love it? And we discovered a lot in the last 4 or 5 weeks. Moving from Christmas, we discovered a lot about ourselves when we had a 2-game January month, about what we feel like in a flat month, and where we go as people emotionally. Now we started to play, we started to see our team again. Oh, hold on a minute, the sun is shining. Literally, the sun is shining, and I can see what we're trying to do, and we're all now hopefully turning to a bit more of a positive outlook on the group. So I find it really interesting, and I just want to go through it game by game, mate, and see where we end up.
Well, I'm going to go through it 4 games by game because since we've been back, we've added 14 goals to our goal difference, scored 16, conceded 2. Here are the XG numbers from those games for people who care. Against Palace, 3.3 to 0.3. Against Forest, 1.2 to 0.5. Against Liverpool, 3.5 to 0.4. And against West Ham, 3.6 to 0.2. We are blowing teams off the pitch now. And this is what good teams do. They don't just, win a game late, nudge them. We had a lot of high moments last season. Bournemouth comes to mind, right? That's a very high moment. United come to mind. There were a lot of them. But the great teams don't necessarily fall behind to Bournemouth at home and need to chase the game all game and win in the 95th minute. I get it. And by the way, sometimes they do. Sometimes you have to do that. City won a title with Aguero in the 96th minute or whatever it was in a game that they should have put to bed way before that. So it happens and you'll take it. But we are blowing teams off the pitch. Now, here's the thing, Clive. We played Burnley away, Newcastle at home, Sheffield United away, Brentford at home, Chelsea at home. Those are the games before the international break. And then, unfortunately, I hate it. After the international break, we go to City. And I hate that fixture comes out after an international break when the players have been away and haven't had a chance to train and who knows what shape they'll come back in. Same's true for City, to be fair. But with the size of their squad, maybe a little bit easier. I think we have to win all 5 of those games. Burnley away, Newcastle home, Sheffield United away, Brentford at home, Chelsea at home. A couple of Porto games thrown in there, of course. During that time, City will go to Anfield and have a couple other tough fixtures. They'll go to Brighton, they'll host Chelsea, they'll host United. I think this is the key. This is the key run. We have a pretty tough run in. I won't bring it up, but we have a pretty tough run in. How important is this now, this run of 5 games before that international break, knowing the trip to the Etihad is out there and in the form we're in, to go pile up the points? And if things go our way a little bit, put ourselves in position to try to navigate that tricky run in, get a win at the Etihad, and maybe do it this season. Because to me, it's got to happen here.
Yeah, I look forward to the Etihad game. But I want to look forward to it as a true contest. And if anything, of all the things you've said there's 2 things that worry me. The games will take care of themselves, but the addition of Porto into those games, because that's new for us, for this group, for this team, for maybe some, it's been 5, 6, 7 years that we've been in this situation. I've been in this situation. So how are we going to manage those games? How are they going to go? Hopefully they're not so too emotional for us, and how that feeds into the next league games. But also the international break. That international break, how we manage that, what players we allow to go, this is the time maybe to be really selfish and say, you know what, we need to sit a couple people, we need to look after a couple of people. The first name that comes into my head is obviously Saka. What's going to happen to him? Can his time away be shared? Because the whole England environment, he loves it, so they're not going to want to keep him away from it. But if we can make sure that we have our players back in shape for the City games, it could be the same for them, by the way. So how each club manages the international break with the players they let go is going to be so critical to that game after the international break. And that is an unknown. And I don't know how it's going to go. We don't know what people are going to look like by then. Are we going to have, touch with any injuries? Are we going to be able to see players hobbled like, we've seen in the past? We still let them go, and then we've had to send physios off with them, that type of thing. We need to manage this better. Remember the Kieran Tierney season when he got injured away, came back, he was gone. We lost our momentum there, didn't make Champions League. We got to manage this international window better than we have done previously, or maybe just need a bit of luck. But that's the key thing for us when we get back. So the build-up, Porto, in addition to the league games, international break, then it's on from there on after.
Yeah, and let's not forget, during this run that I just listed, we have the Porto games. Liverpool have a cup final. They've got an FA Cup tie. They're going to have the return of Europa League. City have Champions League, FA Cup tie, probably another FA Cup tie, assuming they get past Luton, which I think they will. So they're going to start to have massive fixture congestion. Massive, 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 because I think Liverpool and City will both progress in the FA Cup, and I imagine they will both progress in European competition. I expect Liverpool to go to the final of the Europa League. That's my expectation. And I expect City to get past Copenhagen. So squads are going to be stretched a little bit. And this is a period here where, yes, we have the Porto games, but we don't have FA Cup. We don't have League Cup final. We have games that are winnable. This is the period to try to put ourselves in a position, because if I read you the run, and that'll scare the crap out of you, so I'm not going to bother doing that. By the way, I think there's just a lot of joy to be extracted right now, and it's hard, I know, because things are so tense. But I think if you stop for just a second and really celebrate it, it'd be worth it. That this is a very, very good Arsenal team we're watching. I think the only thing, Clive, now is just getting players fit.
Yeah.
You can't be without 7 first-team players this part of the season and have it hold up. Because you know what it does feel like, and we don't need to go any further on this, but it feels like a house of cards where the next or Jenga, the next block that comes out, the tower falls. The team we put out in this game, I'm comfortable with it for the most part. Kiwior will be the one where I'm like, can he hold up? But if you take out Trossard, for Nketiah, or if you take out, God forbid, Declan Rice, for El Neni or whatever, because you look at some of the subs we did bring on, like El Neni, like Cedric, these aren't players we want playing critical minutes. Even, when Eddie came on, you just see the way the attack changes dynamic. So we need players coming back, not going out. And I think that's, much like the last 2 seasons, going to determine how long we hold up in the race.
I agree. I
we'll
think
just hope it holds
maybe
up.
we're not taking the risks that we have done previously because we've got a few more players, shall we say, that we trust.
Yep.
And you take risks with people, you get comfort from seeing them on the team sheet and they can't move. And then you criticise them for not playing well. And say, remember what he did in that game? Well, actually, the issue was we didn't have a choice. We had to wrap him up. We got a few more choices.
Probably happened to
this year.
Saka at times this season with some of the Achilles stuff he was fighting through.
It happened in centre mid last year towards the end of the game. With Xhaka and Partey, they were definitely carrying something. It happened with Ben White the season before. He was carrying things into the last third of the season. And managed
Odegaard
to get
hip earlier this season.
Yeah.
We've played players through stuff.
We have. We need people to come back just to give us the option, shall we say, so we don't spend, no disrespect to him, but we don't want to be talking about real waters because we have people available to play, and that's what we should be, and we've had to sign on a Japanese international for his second contract. We want to make sure that he has the right medical assistance to help him play more minutes, to allow Ben White to stay healthy, to allow Kiwior to not feel overburdened because you're now suddenly playing 90 minutes in a row. Got to make sure we have these players available. Zinchenko, we know can't do multiple 90 minutes. We know this, don't we? So we need to make sure we manage him as well. So this is the key, Elliot, getting those guys back. There's some chat today that they'll all be back within the next fortnight or so. When that happens, let's see where we are. And then I think people will see the power of our squad, and I think that's not been seen yet. So, let's see.
I think we're very fortunate that we don't have a midweek game this week, that it comes next week. I think the timing of things has worked out for us reasonably well. I got to say, I'm so excited for Champions League to come back too. I think Mikel has some things to set right with his European record. And I think he will, for the record, because I think we're excellent and I think we're built for that competition in a certain way. And I think the Europa League's a weird one because you're always trying to win the knockouts with rotated squads. You know what I mean? You're trying to half take it seriously, but not totally take it seriously. The Champions League is going to be all guns blazing, and I'm pretty excited for it. And I'm sure Porto, watching how we're playing right now, will be wondering how they solve this problem. So very, very excited for that to come back. So we'll do a lot of fun stuff around the Europa League. For the away game, we're going to have some really, really special content as well. So that should be really fun. So thank you so much for being here. If you want, by the way, the one thing about the instant reaction pods that I'll just say is that's the celebratory moment, or in some cases the opposite, but in this case, the celebratory moment. So you get moment of the match and you get stocks rising and you really get the immediate joy of the 6-0 to go with, what I hope is good analysis that you get here on the main pod. So something that you can check out there if you want the videos available as well. So we'll leave it there. Paul's already gone. Clive's on Twitter, ClivePFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Should have a rewatch coming for you. I think tomorrow we'll figure that all out, and on as what's becoming a much more fun season carries on. So thanks for being here with us to share it. We love you. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Burnley. No.